Hi, it's Kirby Summers, and I welcome you to my podcast. Before I get started, please like the video, subscribe. I am doing basically a follow-up and expanding on an article I uploaded to my Substack for free a day or two ago. The title of it is The Mystery of Catherine Keating and Jeffrey Epstein Explained. I'm going to go into several areas. I may just refer to someone as someone's relative, but there's enough information that if for some reason you missed something, you could probably Google it or go back and read my article, and you won't miss out on any of the names or what I'm trying to explain. So in this article, I sort of go into the fact that Catherine Keating, who is the daughter of a former prime minister, I'm not going to mention his name. You should be able to either know that or look it up, was photographed, as you know, leaving Epstein's townhouse. And then we have Prince Andrew at the door waving. I've been sort of waiting for someone in mainstream to talk about this specific, it was captured even on video, this specific combination of Prince Andrew and Catherine Keating by the mainstream media. However, I think we know that the mainstream media is an arm of the intelligence agencies. I want to call your attention to what almost sounds like a mantra for me. You know, for years since I began sharing information with you after Jeffrey Epstein's arrest, I have said repeatedly, I believe, let's say, the Franklin child abuse case, the Presidio case, the Epstein case, and there are so many that, you know, it would take, let's call it the Finders as well, are all part of the same tree, let's say, and that each one is sort of a just either a vine on the tree or a root of the tree underneath, but that they are all interconnected. An abuse victim by the name of Fiona Barnett, and many of you are aware of her story. She lives in Australia, and she made her story public many, many years ago. Basically has said the same thing, that they're all connected to the three-letter agency commencing with the letter C, and that it is the way they control politicians and the elite. I want to say that perhaps what we have seen or read from mainstream media, specifically surrounding Prince Andrew, may not necessarily be true. Let's suspend the information that we have gathered about Prince Andrew being somewhat of a dumbed down, you know, idiot. I want to just say to you that one of the best tricks used by intelligence agencies everywhere is for a person to make himself or herself appear stupid. It's the best disguise, because you're going to never suspect someone who appears to be stupid or inferior to the common average person of anything nefarious. So therefore, I mean, we can sort of remember that, let's say, John Wayne Gacy, if I'm pronouncing his name properly, was a clown. You know, he performed at children's shows, but he was, you know, a pedo. Prince Andrew is a royal. There is such a thing as the Illuminati. We know this. And I'm going to talk about Eyes Wide Shut, a film basically that almost everyone saw in 1999 and that continues to be relevant to present day, by Stanley Kubrick. There are certain things in that film that continue to sort of show up today as the Epstein story, which I look at as a portal into this world of the elite and trafficking and things that are yet to be revealed. I'm going to go back and share some information that many of you may be familiar with and some of you may never have heard. So, as you know, the film stars Tom Cruise and his then wife, Nicole Kidman. The victim that I just spoke about, Fiona Barnett, names Nicole Kidman's father, who I will not name, as being one of the many people, because it consisted of men and women, who abused her when she was a child in what she described as a ring that was very powerful. She's not the only person to step forward and talk about these very powerful rings. You know, we have Karen Mulder, who stepped forward in 2001 on the TV show when the information she provided was just scrubbed. We've had many people, and the most recent are the Epstein victims, but that story is missing a lot of the elements that Fiona was able to share with the public, but not many people know her story. I encourage you to Google her, look at the information she provided. Now, for Stanley Kubrick in this film, which is an expose of the world of the elite, the secret world of the elite. And frankly, it's a very tame version of what happens at these parties. You know, we have a very tame situation. We know that 25 minutes were removed from the film. But the scene where the Tom Cruise character finds himself where everyone is wearing a mask, and you know, we see that there are, let's call, I guess that we're going to call them orgies, which we can then of course say is part of the Epstein world as well, and that there's a sacrifice. We have not heard anything about anyone being, quote, sacrificed in the Epstein matter, but that's because you've only been hearing partial information. And the information that has been fed to the public by mainstream media has kept it at just, and they've tried to just keep it at sort of the trafficking of minors. But there were women of age, men of age, who not only participated in this world on various levels, but that are a continuation of other rings, like the one that Fiona was part of, and that Catherine Keating is related to, which kind of draws a complete straight line from the one in Australia to the one in New York that, you know, basically was run by Epstein. But I want to present to you this alternative view that Prince Andrew may have played a much more important role. Why? Because Prince Andrew, as I said, is a member of the royal family. The royal family and the Rothschild family are the two highest ranked members of the Illuminati. The Illuminati, as you probably have heard, consists of 13 of the most powerful families. I'm not going to go over that. You can Google that. There's that information is even on the CIA's website. You can download that. But the Rothschilds have historically, and I just want to go over this before I get into some of the stuff of Eyes Wide Shut, have historically been the bankers for the royal family of Britain. You know, they go back hundreds of years. In fact, I think like maybe 3 years ago, I found a photograph of one of the more recent members of the Rothschild family who just died, of Evelyn de Rothschild, poking his finger into then Prince Charles's chest. And it looked like he was admonishing him. I mean, Prince Charles, who is now the king, was being chastised by this man. He just died 2 years ago, I believe, on November 10th, 2022. Well, just recently, frankly, at the age of 91. However, he was not just the banker to the royal family, but he was also an advisor to Queen Elizabeth II and probably King Charles until he died. So my thing is, what if Prince Andrew, who was considered to be a fool, in fact, a gimmick? You know, we all saw him go on the BBC and give an interview that was, frankly, it backfired, but did it backfire? Or did it, in fact, make him look like a fool for A, sitting there and doing it to begin with, and B, you know, the answers were frankly so foolish. You know, in one of my books, I believe Jeffrey Epstein, Predator Spy, I have the entire thing. I transcribed it and I put it in my book, Jeffrey Epstein, Predator Spy, because some of the answers are just ludicrous. Well, okay, before I go into the film Eyes Wide Shut, keep in mind that Andrew is not the only member, as you know, of the royal family to be connected to a pedophile. We have then Prince Charles, who was connected to Jimmy Savile. We have Lord Mountbatten, who was a mentor to Charles as a boy. I mean, I actually went back over 100 years and find that their ancestors were connected to pedophiles, and or were pedophiles themselves. You can do that research. That's not difficult to do. One of the iconic scenes of the film Eyes Wide Shut was filmed at the enormous entertainment room of Mentmore Towers, which was built in 1852 and for the, you know, Rothschild family, in this case, Baron Meyer de Rothschild. The family sold it in 1970. However, as I said, between the Rothschilds and the royal family, they're the top ranking members of the 13 families that make up what is known as the Illuminati. In Eyes Wide Shut, there's an anagram. An anagram is a word or a phrase that if you rearrange the letters, it turns into a different word or phrase. there's an anagram that spells out the word Royal Lancer. Royal Lancer is connected to Prince Andrew. And I believe I tweeted about this when I had my original account, which I now no longer have. It was removed in November of last year. Royal Lancer, the screen image, and you may have to go back into the archive machine. The Duke of York is the commander-in-chief of the Royal Lancers. It's basically the branch of the British Army in the UK. And so Stanley Kubrick, basically in that film, 1999, it was released to the public, had a connection, not just by selecting Nicole Kidman, but by selecting Prince Andrew in the film about the Illuminati. And there's a small scene where the Tom Cruise character goes into the costume shop that reveals the little, the 13, 14-year-old teenage girl who was the daughter of the man who owns the costume store. And there's a reference to pedophilia there, as well as the ending, which I'm not going to go into right now. However, each one of the connections that Stanley Kubrick included in his film continue to sort of expose a wider role of this underground that many of us were unaware of until the Epstein scandal broke. The other thing I want to say before I move on away from this is, and you probably all know about this, Larry Salona is a New York Post reporter who basically was hired. This is what we're told by the media. He was hired by Stanley Kubrick to write 2 articles for the film. And his name is prominently shown as the author of these 2 articles. He also basically wrote an article for another film called The Perfect Murder in 2014. One of the articles in the Kubrick film, In Eyes Wide Shut, was headlined Lucky to Be Alive. And basically it was the cover-up of the murder of a sex slave, and it reported it as an overdose, a suicide. Well, we know, having watched the film and knowing about the film, that basically she was sacrificed. I have a friend who is a reporter for the New York Times, and I have questioned him multiple times throughout the years about whether or not there's a real Larry Salona, because Larry Salona also was the first person to report on Epstein's original suicide attempt when he had not, died. He was the first to actually report on Epstein's death. He was the first person to release pictures of Epstein's body as a dead person when he died. So Epstein's dead body, let's say. He was the first person to release those staged photographs of Ghislaine Maxwell. He was the first person to release information in the New York Post on the death of John F. Kennedy Jr. A lot, and John F. Kennedy, the Kennedys are connected to other rings. And I don't really want to go into the Kennedy connection to rings on this podcast, because that's a podcast by itself. And I may just do that for my platform on Patreon. However, what I really want to focus on is, what if we're looking at Andrew in a different way? What if Andrew, because seeing Catherine Keating and Prince Andrew as not only being connected to Jeffrey Epstein, let's say as an aside, but as perhaps on a level above Epstein and Maxwell. We've heard from someone who worked with Epstein and Maxwell that Ghislaine has said that the Rothschild family were her family's protectors. Now, I did a little digging into how these 13 families who basically control the world, the Illuminati, I mean, it's real. It's not a, I don't think that it's a conspiracy. I mean, I think there's enough information to substantiate this. I mean, it's even in the CIA files. That's how real it is. That their role, and we've heard that Andrew visited Epstein at least 3 times a year. He visited him so much that it didn't bother him that he had been convicted of, sort of a crime and had to register as a sex offender. So that when we start looking at, well, was he just stupid? Well, what if he and Catherine Keating, who was a member of a family that is connected to the Fiona situation in Australia, are in fact just seriously sitting on a higher level and were Epstein's bosses? We know that money came from Leslie Wexner, the CEO of L Brands, used to be called The Limited, also had Victoria's Secret, and Leon Black, now former CEO of Apollo. But what we have to also remember is that when the CIA was sort of busted with their MK Ultra program and other things in 1973, 1974, 1975 with the Church Committee hearings, they started to use, and they had done this previously, but then they really, really went underground and began to use people as money funnels. So I have always been of the opinion that Wexner and Black were funnels that passed the money that Epstein used for his operation through those 2 channels. And that's pretty much, I don't know why some people think that Ghislaine Maxwell's father, Robert, that his whatever money he stowed away somewhere was the basis for Epstein's money. No, we already had proof that Epstein was connected to Wexner. Now, but we also, well, at least the work that I've done, show that they met, Wexner and Epstein very likely met long before 1986, 1987, as has been reported in Vanity Fair. I don't want to go off on too many tangents, but I just want you to put some thought into the fact that Prince Andrew, again, being a member of the royal family, one of the top families of the Illuminati, being considered by the world at large as a fool. And remember, he was the only one that was publicly shamed. Why? Because it really makes no difference. He's never going to go to jail. None of the men in any of these cases of child abuse, none of the cases have ever gone to jail. The only person that went to jail was Jeffrey Epstein. So the way that it's structured is these 13 very powerful families form alliances with the mob. You know, they have some mobsters that work for them and or other families. And in this case, we can see that the Rothschild family formed an alliance with the Maxwells, right? And then there's an alliance at some point, and it may have been through the royal family with Epstein. When Epstein was working at Bear Stearns, he said that one of his clients was Queen Elizabeth II, so Prince Andrew's mother. You know, the Queen Elizabeth situation has not been explored. You know, I can go on and on about how some of the attorneys have changed the narrative of this story, but I've done that, and I don't want to be, you know, I don't want to just say the same thing over and over again, but I do want you to reconsider Andrew's role in this, because putting him out into the public to be the only person so that the public had someone to vent and sort of release our frustration on is pretty convenient. You know, it's very safe. Again, nothing is going to happen to Andrew. The sort of money that was given to the women who stepped forward with allegations against Epstein, Maxwell, and or other people that they were trafficked to is as much as $5 million. I have continued to search for other amounts given by the church that has, the Catholic Church has had so many allegations of child abuse for a very long time. And, you know, the highest number that I found was $50,000, and then it changed to 55, but it was roughly around $20,000. But nowhere have I found anything to be 5 million. So it seems to me, and I suppose it might seem to many of you as well, that these amounts were given to these victims so that we can just close the door on the Epstein case, not look at it any further, silence them, because part of the agreement was that if you take this money, you can't sue Ghislaine Maxwell or any of the other people involved. You just can't do it. You know, you can't sue anyone, not Sarah Kellen, no one. We know that Alex Acosta basically came out and gave up Epstein being connected to intelligence. Acosta is in the United States. That would mean the CIA. However, if you read through the material provided by Fiona, she does include Israel's Mossad, MI6 in the UK, whatever the intelligence agency is called in Australia, you know, all of these working together through the CIA. So it makes sense with Epstein having made the comment many times to many different people, including to victims, that he, quote, worked for the CIA, that indeed, again, these are all the same, they're all connected, and that we have to take that image of Catherine Keating and Prince Andrew at Epstein's Manhattan mansion and evaluate that and use that to maybe guide us into studying this from a different angle. Okay, if you have any questions about this, I would love to hear them. Just leave them in the comment section below. Today is Sunday. It's raining in New York. I hope you're having a good day wherever you are. Once again, like the video, subscribe, and we'll do this again soon. Bye.